This is MJ. I'm an author, I'm an artist, I'm an analyzer. Find all my work at mjmunoz.com. Prepare yourself for unbannable book analysis as I talk about whether or not this story holds a place of honor or scorn in the Fortress fiction. Welcome to Fortress Fiction, episode 14. This time I'm talking about Peter Pan, and I'm asking the question, does JM Barrie's Peter Pan hold a place of scorn or honor in the Fortress fiction? What do you think and why? I am curious to know. The comments are open as always. You can leave a comment anywhere you're finding this episode, preferably at the website. That's the best place to find me and interact with me. And I'm going to go ahead and get into it. First, I'm going to clarify something that before I started this, I've changed the schedule for Fortress Fiction. I've changed the schedule from being something that comes out every week without fail to being something that comes out as soon as within a short time after I'm done with the book. I liked Peter Pan so much that in the middle of the fourth chapter, I stopped listening. I went back. I decided to go ahead and listen and react and review each chapter on its own. So if you go over to the Fortress Fiction YouTube channel, you can find my short videos, 60 seconds or less, 59 seconds or less, where I'm reacting to things that happen in the chapter, things that we learn in the chapter, as I go through the book. And you can also find, here on mjmunoz.com, you can find a complete chapter-by-chapter collection where I have collated all the audio files so you can listen to it straight through. And there's also a YouTube video link for the playlist that goes all the way through my fuller reactions, or not reactions, but thoughts and reviews on the chapter as I went through each book, or as I went through each chapter of the book. And there's 17 of those because Peter Pan is 17 chapters long. They range from, I don't know, anywhere from 5 minutes to like 12 minutes, I think. One or two of them are that long. So anyway, I did that as an experiment. It's a way to just process the book differently, and because I was enjoying it so much, and I hope it's something that you enjoy. If you haven't checked it out yet, now's the time, or you can wait till this is over too. It doesn't really matter. Either way, they're going to be unique experiences, and I will go ahead and get into talking about this book already. I want to start by letting you know, if you haven't read the book yet, you really should, and you can read it by getting it free from Cloud Library or from LibriVox in audiobook format. You can also get it from Project Gutenberg in ebook format, or from your local library. Again, these are all free options. If you want to purchase it, you can get it from Kobo, Amazon. There is Simon & Schuster apparently holds the rights. They're the current publisher right now, so you can get it there as well. But there's lots of people selling the book, so wherever fine books are sold, you can find it. So I encourage you to do that because it's a great book. So now I'm going to go ahead and talk about the book itself, my full thoughts on the book. So Peter Pan's a little bit of a complicated one, so a little bit of a wobbler. I'll start off with the writing of it itself. JM Barrie is a very skillful writer. I think he's very adept at creating emotional tension. I think he's very adept at creating a sense of wonder, at almost being preachy and almost being psychoanalytical without it feeling boring or irritating or frustrating at all. In fact, some of the most exciting parts took place while he was analyzing psychology and preaching a little bit, especially because in some ways, while this is a children's book, and it started off as a children's play, and I believe the rights to it now belong to this children's hospital in England or something like that, and they make all the money off of it, which is great idea, great cause. It seems like it's very much written to adults, with adults in mind, and it's mostly age-appropriate, very age-appropriate, and then there are places where it's not, and there are places where it stops addressing the children and instead turns to the parents and the adults who are reading and brings things up to them. It talks about things with them. It has a little side conversation and hushes the children to the side and spends time talking to the adult, and it seems so strange. There are things that are definitely borderline inappropriate, and there's things that are, I guess, definitely inappropriate, depending on your definitions of those things. I have a pretty solid worldview, which, makes me shy away from certain things, and the point of Fortress Fiction, and the point of this assessment of is it worthy of scorn or praise or honor, is, if children are reading these books, if children are reading this book, are they going to be built up and helped to grow into better people, or is it going to hold them down? Is it going to cause them to degenerate, to turn into something they shouldn't be? And that may seem like a tall order, but our fiction, the stories that we read and experience, shape us, and it's undeniable. So I am only interested in that. And that's not what I'm only interested in. I'm interested in stories being good and compelling and well written, which this story is all of those things. And now that that's out of the way, that this is it's a well written book, it's a competently written book, and it has a lot of style and flair that I find admirable and laudable and delightful. Now there's the question: is it morally sound? Is it good? Is it going to help children? And I think yes, ultimately, is my decision. I'm going to slow down and go back to some of the negative elements, some of the harsher, sharper elements. And this discussion isn't made for children. It's about children's books, but it's not made to be had with a child. Just because something is meant for a child's best interest doesn't mean that you talk about it in front of the child, or that you invite them to participate in the conversation, because that doesn't really make sense. Children are not allowed to consent. They're not allowed to have a say in certain things, or they're not allowed to, maybe it's foolish to let them be too informed about certain things, depending on their age and their stage. So, that being said, I will move on and talk about some of the more sensitive topics in here that kind of gave me pause and made me consider rejecting this and saying this doesn't belong in the Fortress Fiction, when ultimately I believe it does. So, Peter and the Lost Boys are killing pirates. They're possibly killing Indians as well. The Pickaninny tribe mentioned here. I don't know if that's a real tribe or not, but it kind of doesn't matter for the context of the story. It's a very, children also aren't flying out their windows with pixie dust on them because they're thinking happy thoughts, right? So, these children are killing people, and Peter speaks as if he's killed many, many, many people. Towards the end of the book, he's asked about somebody that he killed, and he says, I forget them after I kill them. And that's a little odd. It's a little much. It's a little, I don't know, transgressive. It seems maladaptive. It seems ill-adjusted, or maladjusted, I should say, perhaps. And it's a little worrisome. In other review series, I've said that I like my heroes to be deadly weirdos. And that's true when the forces that they're facing are clearly evil, or very destructive, wantonly destructive, you could say. And that's easier to say when the people saying these types of things, or these people who are being deadly weirdos, are grown men and women. There are adults doing these things, and not children killing people as if they're doing it because they're playing. And it's all very strange how the book frames things and how Barrie frames things. And I'll get back to that in a minute when I talk about the context of the Neverland and its fascinating relationship with Peter, the symbiotic relationship that it seems to have. The other things that I find objectionable, and almost made me reconsider not accepting this, excuse me, are the thimbling scenes, or the kissing scenes, and Tinkerbell's infatuation, I should say, with Peter. It's more fascinating based on the way fairy lore works, that even if Peter was to give his heart to Tinkerbell, let's say, he would love her for all of her short life, perhaps, and then she would die and leave him heartbroken, which is interesting to think that she'd be willing to do that, because it certainly seems like she wants to be his love. Princess Tiger Lily also wants to be his love. She wants to be something to him that isn't a mother, and Peter doesn't understand what that is. And Wendy also wants to be something to Peter which isn't a mother, and he doesn't understand what that is, and she's very upset with it. I talked about this in the chapter by chapter that, girls are said to mature faster than boys, and Peter is still very much a boy, even though Wendy is at the cusp of womanhood, I guess you could say. She's 12, she's 11, I'm not 100% sure. Peter seems to be the same exact age, and yet he has all his baby teeth still, his original teeth. That might be an effect of Neverland, I'm not sure. And he's supposed to be the same size and age as her. It's stated clearly in the second or third chapter, I believe it is. Wendy tells Mrs. Darling that, and she doesn't know how she knows, but she does know that is the case. And again, this isn't made for children, so I'll just say it. There's like an interesting, unresolved sexual tension between Peter and these various women. And there's even a hint that maybe Mrs. Darling and Peter, long ago when she was a girl, shared a kiss, because while she now wants to be his mother and adopt him as well as the rest of the Lost Boys, there's this talk very early on in the book of this kiss in the corner of her mouth that nobody could ever get to, not even Mr. Darling, and he had stopped even trying. And Peter gets the kiss, and he takes it with him as he goes to Neverland after dropping off the Darling children and the Lost Boys. And the book kind of talks about his heart being melted by women, which women are complicated creatures in my estimation, and their assessment of beauty and handsomeness and charm and things like that in other people are interesting. There's almost an innocence to it. There's almost a indulgence, I would say. I have a very traditional viewpoint, a very traditional mindset when it comes to these things. The way my wife and my daughters act towards things is, ways that I wouldn't act towards most things. Especially when it has to do with, relationships, like this, I guess you could say. Anyway, so there's kind of an innocence to the way that Mrs. Darling, I guess, gives this kiss to Peter, or lets him have this kiss before he goes. And I don't know, it's really interesting because it's not that she and her daughter are fighting over Peter. And we get to see that at the end of the book, Wendy lets Peter take her daughter Jane off to the Neverland for some period of time, unspecified, where she does spring cleaning for him, tells him stories about himself, which he's delighted to hear because he's forgotten all his old adventures because he doesn't remember. He just moves on from them. And then Jane eventually becomes a woman, gets married, and her daughter Margaret is the next one to take the role as Peter's mother. And there's a really weird thing going on here, where Wendy wants to be his mother, but she also wants to be his lover, his wife, his whatever. And that never gets to happen for her. And he's not interested because he's sexually neutered. He's sexually mute. He doesn't think that way. He has the innocence of a child. He has the innocence of a young boy who's interested in playing pretend and having adventures and things like that. And none of that leaves room for romance. He doesn't seem to understand what the actual kiss is that Wendy gives him. When they kiss, when their lips meet, well, it's unclear whether or not their lips actually met, because Tinkerbell did pull Wendy's hair to stop her from kissing Peter at the time when she offered to give him a thimble. When she finally got the courage to do it. So we don't know if they actually kissed, and we don't know if that would have been a kiss on the lips, it would have been a kiss on the cheek. Which again, that's a little racy for my tastes, and it's a little racy for me to say to go ahead and throw it at kids and say that this is, good for you. And I certainly wouldn't want to encourage any children to engage in any kissing that they shouldn't be doing. And that's a little concerning for me, but everything else in the story kind of covers that stuff up. It covers up the fact that children are being scalped by Indians, that pirates are being scalped by Indians, that children are killing Indians and pirates, and that these kids are kissing, that there's this weird sexual tension and romantic kind of thing going on here. Because while those things exist in the book, there's a lot of interesting interplay between imagination and pretend and reality. And for Peter, there is a very wobbly line between what is real and what is fantasy and what's pretend. And it's almost like his pretend play is more real to him than the things that are real, because he has this very interesting affliction, I would call it. I would call it that. He doesn't know what to call it because he doesn't think about it, where he just forgets and he forgets and he forgets. Like his mind just flushes things out, and he loses himself in whatever he's doing now and wherever he is now, whoever he's with now. And he has no long-term attachment to those people or places or things, really, except he always goes back to the Neverland that he has this symbiotic relationship to. And the island awakens when he comes back to the island, and it kind of falls dormant when he goes away from the island. And there's even stuff in there about how the island wants to find people who go to it and who belong there. And I don't really know what that's all about, but it all feels very magical and warm and whimsical. And while there are serious things going on, while there's children's chastity and innocence and purity at stake, it's also played off in a way that it's not really concerning. The book doesn't, the book states it clearly that that's what's going on, and it's kind of weird that Barrie put that stuff in there, but he also doesn't indulge it. He doesn't endorse it. It's just, he's recording what's happening, and he's recording what these girls are thinking and what they're saying to Peter and how they're feeling about him, without it turning into something voyeuristic or without it turning into something instructional or encouraging. It's more like, oh, look at these silly girls who have these feelings towards Peter, and he just, wants to play. And it isn't that he's non-committal. He doesn't engage in anything with them because, knowingly, because those things don't exist to him. That's an aspect of his psyche, his personality, his makeup psychologically that just doesn't exist. And it's very interesting. It's very interesting. He's got this, the innocence of a child, but also the ferocity of a child. And it's very interesting how the story explains or features how children are. It shows them being sweet and loving and kind and helpful, but also cruel and selfish. And it's a very real portrait of humanity through this really fantastical tale. And the Darlings, Mr. and Mrs. Darling, are kind of humbled and shown to be very flawed, very fallible, and to have made big mistakes that they're not proud of at all. And the reader gets to kind of share in their chagrin and be embarrassed with them and for them. And it's really too bad that, they let themselves get out of hand and cause these issues that cause suffering to themselves and to a lesser extent their children, because their children were having a lot of fun in the Neverland instead, and weren't so bothered by things like their parents would have been, or, might think they should be. But yeah, it's like a wildly interesting portrayal of both the adults and the children, of humans in general. And it has this absurdist flair to it, like Nana being the a dog and the maid, and that being something that is plausible and possible and people in the world accept. And the only negative effect, the only crazy thing about it, is that it might lower George Darling's social standing, and that's something that he cares about. And he, lives in the kennel for a while the children are gone, as penance for what he did in letting them flee and letting them go away, causing it to all happen by Nana being kicked out of the nursery for that night. Details about the book we don't actually need to go into. But yeah, it's like this very honest portrait of people, and Captain Hook is obsessed with Peter Pan and wants to kill this child because he's cocky, and Hook is obsessed with having good form because of the schooling that he had, which was apparently a reference to some real school in England, but I have no concept of what that is. And Peter's natural cockiness just causes him to hate him and to want to kill him, literally murder this child. And he's thrilled when he thinks he's done it by poisoning him. And then he's happy to fight him to the death on the ship later at the end of the book, at the climax of everything. And it's really interesting how absurd that is, and how scary and real that is at the same time, that somebody could want to do that. But I don't know, it's this really fascinating blend of these whimsical, magical elements, these really harsh looks at what people are really like, and a lot of fun and fantasy. Like, it's a fun book, and while Peter doesn't grow, and he doesn't really cause the people around him to grow, he's not that kind of character, and it's not that kind of book. There are, I don't know, things that are, it's almost like the book teaches about the ephemerality of life, and it does show Peter to be kind of a tragic figure, going from mother to mother and never getting to grow up and fall in love and have children of his own to pass on life to pass on stories to. He never takes on that responsibility, and he never gets that privilege because he refuses to grow up, whereas Wendy and Jane and Margaret all grow up past that childish stage where they are content to be with this boy who will never be a man, and they find men and marry them and have children and pass on the stories of Peter Pan because they value them and they love them and they love him to some extent, even though he doesn't love them back the way they want him to. And in that way, it almost feels like it's a story about children and parents, because frankly, I don't think your children ever love you the way you love them. And I'm sure I don't love my parents the way they love me and the way they want me to love them. And it's just kind of a failing that we have as children, that we never love the people we should, the way we should. And it's a little bit of a tragedy. It's a little sad, but it's also true. And I don't know that it's important to know, but I think it makes life better knowing. Just like it's not important to read all these stories, to know all these stories, but it makes life better when we get to share them with each other, when we get to experience them. And I don't know, there's something really, with all the crazy things in it and all the negative elements, there's still something very like soulful and honest and open and stirring, I think, about this book. And I think that alone, the wonder and the mystery and the awe that are evoked by it are enough to make it worthy of a place of honor in the Fortress Fiction. It's a little dubious, but it's there. Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts on this book. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what exactly Barrie was trying to accomplish with this book and how you think he did. And I want to know what struck you. What struck you in this book? What really hit you hard and impacted you? What had an effect on you? Because I think there are things in here that are really good for sparking an emotion, sparking thought and consideration and contemplation. And yeah, maybe that's what it is, that it sparks contemplation because it makes you think about the world that the characters exist in, which is a reflection of our world because of the interesting and fantastical scenarios that they find themselves in. I think it sounds about right. Anyway, I thank you for your time and attention. I encourage you to check out the website. I published a short story called Karuv, Midnight Angel, recently, just earlier, before getting this out, within a couple days, I mean, and I encourage you to check that out. It's an original short story that I wrote for a contest. It did not win the contest, and I thought I should go ahead and share it with you, see how people like it. I'd love to hear feedback on that, as well as on these books, or on my analysis of this book. And again, I encourage you to check out the chapter by chapter episodes covering the book, and join me as I jump into the next book pretty soon, which is going to be Maniac McGee from 1990, I believe. I don't know anything about it, although other than it has to do with racism and an orphan, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes, I guess. I want to talk to you about somehow the little white. I want to talk to you about Barrie's other works. He was a prodigious author of plays, and he wrote 30, 40, I couldn't quite tell. I stopped counting because it was too many. I have a bibliography linked here in the show notes so you can see that. And there are 5 versions of Peter Pan, it looks like. There's the stage play, and then there was the actual books, and we have from 1902, The Little White Bird or Adventures in Kensington Gardens. Then we have Peter Pan or The Boy Who Wouldn't Grow Up, staged, which I mean put on the stage as a play in 1904, published 1928 somehow. Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens, not to be confused with Adventures in Kensington Gardens, in 1906, and then When Wendy Grew Up, An Afterthought, written 1908, published 1957. And then we have Peter and Wendy, the novel, 1911, which is the version that I have linked to here from LibriVox. And it's a little confusing why there's so many different versions, and I'm frankly not going to listen to all of them to, I don't know, satisfy somebody's curiosity or make it, I'm just not going to take the time to go through the different versions of it and verify that they're all 100% the same, because that seems kind of silly to me. Frankly, it seems kind of silly that there are so many of them, so many different versions of it, but, it's something to talk about for another time. I guess it's probably an echo or a result of what the publishing industry was like at the time, which, since it was so long ago, it wasn't very organized, I think. So, anyway, that's all. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here and let the outro take care of everything else. So, thank you for your time and attention. I hope you enjoyed that. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I invite you to comment, ask questions, and share your thoughts with me. It's always more fun when you're part of the conversation. Until next time, keep reading, be well, and do good things. Visit mjmunoz.com for more of my work and help me build up the Fortress Fiction.